Welcome to the Tales from the Pros podcast by Imagine Ovation. In the world of tech and business, it's easy to get caught up in the tools, tactics, and chasing revenue. But behind every breakthrough, there's always a deeper story, driven by people building with purpose and meaning. This show is for the founders, business leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs doing the hard work, navigating challenges, leading through change, and building things that matter. We're here to bridge the gap between technology and people through honest, raw storytelling in the world of innovation and without all the BS. Tales from the Pros. Real conversations, real growth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tales from the Pros podcast by Imagine Ovation. I'm your host, Eric Lawrence. I'm filling in for Michael as he is away today. And I'm joined here by a co-host and our Chief Product Officer, Zach Bruno. Hey, Zach, welcome.
Happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here. So today we're talking about something that separates great products from costly mistakes, the discovery phase. So many founders want to jump straight into design and development, but the truth is skipping discovery is the fastest way to waste a budget. To help us unpack this, Zach's here and he's led discoveries for hundreds of digital products. He's been with the company for over 8 years now. And Zach's an expert at turning early ideas into clear, validated products. And today, he's sharing exactly what great teams do before a single line of code is written. So Zach, thank you again for joining us. And I am excited to pick your brain on this topic.
Yeah. This is an important one. A lot of teams, a lot of companies get this wrong. Yeah. Happy to share any insights that I can.
Yeah. So let's open it up. When it comes to most teams underestimating discovery, I feel like that's a common trend. What are the biggest misconceptions founders or executives have about it? And why do so many skip it altogether?
So in most cases, what you'll see is discovery is skipped because teams think that we know what we need to do. Let's just build it and we have an audience for it. It should work. The problem with that is you skip the validation step, and discovery is most useful when you're using it for validation. So the purpose of discovery is to take your idea, bring it to life as quickly as possible, and get feedback on it. And in some cases now, when we'll get to this topic later, AI kind of makes that easier to actually have a real functional product. But for the most part, building a prototype and discovery and validating, getting feedback with that to make sure that before we spend all this time building, we have something that people actually want and need is a crucial step.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I feel like for a lot of people, they focus a lot on the design stage. They get excited about that. They get excited about the way that the product's going to look. And then they think a little bit less about the actual planning piece. And have you really mapped out the best user experience?
That's right. Exactly. And they sort of start over designing because it's exciting, it's fun. And you didn't lay the groundwork and, end up building something that people may or may not want.
Yeah. When you run into somebody that comes to you and says, "Hey, I have these designs built out," what do you usually find is kind of like a mistake that they've made that you have to basically find again and fix during that planning phase?
Yeah, what I see the most is, the first step is to take, designs that are given and take a step back and really analyze the core needs of the audience that we're building for. So what you'll find in designs is that they have designed something that is cool. It probably is a cool experience to walk through, but it turns out that the core audience didn't actually need it or want it. So the goal is to re-get the drawing board, make sure we have a strong foundation, and build the least amount for the most value.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I know the validation piece, it's what you said, it's missing a lot of the time. I wonder if the validation piece is mostly looked past because it's just hard to get validation. And I know for a lot of people, they have trouble kind of letting their idea go and putting it out in front of a lot of others.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you think you're sort of onto like the $1 million idea and you want to just build the whole thing because then it's too late for someone to copy you. The reality is the sooner you get your idea in front of real users and clash it with reality, the sooner you'll have, be able to start moving towards a product that is actually useful in the marketplace.
Yeah. On the validating piece, I'm interested to get your take on this. I know there's a bit of a balance when you are validating a product. Do you go for monetization? Do you go for just pure validation? Is this a good idea? What's the balancing act there? And I'm sure it might come down to it depends, but I'm interested to get your take.
Yeah. So definitely the ultimate goal is with any product or business is to validate that your core users or your audience are willing to pay for the solution to their problem that you're presenting them. So definitely making sure that they're willing to pay for it. But what you're really looking for is to make sure that the solution you put in place actually solves their problem first. So, and the way you do that is by rapid prototyping, getting feedback, and iterating on the prototype until it's at a place where we know this solution actually solves the problem. Now, the key with feedback, and this is sort of the biggest thing that all product teams have to balance, is how do you balance between your vision and taste or intuition of what you should build that the users don't know they need and want yet versus taking their feedback, what they tell you and what you observe in their behavior and implement something that they need now. Because users only have insight into the context of the product that they see and know. So occasionally you'll get a user that understands and a customer that understands sort of the bigger picture, but in most cases, the feedback you're going to get is very relevant to what you've shown them. And so
Mm.
it's a balance between building the cool stuff in the future and what's immediately valuable now. And, that's just to determine what you should have that solves the problem. Now, once you iterate and refine on the solution to make sure that it solves their problem, then you can start testing, okay, is this valuable enough for people to pay for? And once people start paying for it and they're willing to pay for it, even if you do it manually at first and don't actually build it into the product, that's how you know you're onto something.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I know for our own project management and task management tool, Magic Task, that was a balance that we dealt with where there were a lot of things from a what's the user giving us feedback from versus like what direction do we see this that could be blind spots for just normal users of how we want to move this thing forward. There's always kind of that balance of, you know, do we feel like we know more than our users in certain ways, but should we listen to them in other ways?
Absolutely. Yep. That's the sweet spot you got to find. Every product team has to go through it. It's one of the most challenging things.
Yeah. So getting a little bit deeper into the discovery piece, the deliverables from that discovery can make or break a product and a project in general. What would you say are the most valuable assets that come out of a discovery? Maybe like things like a user journey, wireframes, clickable prototypes. And the second part to that is how do they directly impact development success?
Yeah. So historically, discovery, like I said, the goal of discovery is to bring the idea to life very quickly and start getting feedback, iterating on, something that is easier than the actual product itself. And so that's changed a lot over the years. What we're seeing now is during discovery, it's becoming easier and easier to build a real functioning prototype via, vibe coding, AI tools, even if it's not great. It's a way to allow the user to walk through something tangible. Before that, Figma prototypes and design prototypes were very useful, and they still are because you can sort of mock up a level of fidelity that you can't really get through a vibe coding tool. So
Mhm.
creating a high fidelity prototype is often very useful. But I would say in general, the output of a discovery is to have something that helps you frame the product in your own mind for your team to understand, but also something that you can use to pass to customers and get feedback or whoever the core audience of the product is.
Yeah. And I'm interested to know, you've been with the company for over 8 years. How have the deliverables for the discoveries that we do for clients, how has that evolved over time?
Yeah. So when we first started out in discoveries, we were very much focused on building creating the documentation that allows us to plan and understand what to build better. So like specking detail, creating architecture diagrams, specking things out, user flow diagrams. But where we're seeing the discovery go is, to mold more with what you know real product teams are doing outside of like the service industry, and where we want to assist in the actual iteration of the usage from the users and the feedback. And so what we're seeing is, like I said, getting the real prototype in the hands of real users is going to be the most valuable thing. But obviously, it's a balance as well between planning what we need as a team to build the product and actually getting feedback from real users.
Yeah, I know that there was like a phase where OOUX, object oriented user experience, was really big, where you could basically go in and, you know, holistically look at what are all the pieces that are going to go into an application or a piece of software, and how do they all interact with one another. I feel like I haven't been hearing quite as much about that. Is there kind of a reason behind it?
It's one method. Yes, we sort of had it as part of our standard practice. But what we found is when you keep your processes too rigid, it sort of doesn't allow you to morph and mold to the product needs. So there's still a place for object oriented user experience, which is what that stands for. OUX is what that stands for. And so, however, we're mapping the user experience doesn't matter too much. It really depends on the product and the client needs and the user needs. But in most cases, we are still mapping some version of the data flow and the high level objects in the system, which is what the goal of object oriented UX is.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. So it's more just a case by case scenario. Got it. So my next question, this comes from the background of you having led discovery for projects ranging anywhere from startups all the way to enterprise. What are some real examples where strong discovery completely changed the direction or outcome of a product?
Yeah. So in most cases, like I said, skipping the discovery is a mistake, which is the purpose and the topic of this episode. And so we have, with that said, we've learned the lesson. We've done it before, right? So we've built products where we skipped the discovery, sort of went straight into design and building it. And what we found is, for one, we were less aligned when we actually went to build it. And for two, the product itself turned out to be overbuilt. So in almost every case in the real world, whenever we do discovery, it turns out that the product we build is more refined and the team is more aligned on what we're building and why, especially the why from the beginning, so that we don't run into those issues further down the line throughout the engineering process.
Makes sense. And is there such a thing when you get into the discovery phase as like having too many cooks in the kitchen, as far as like when you're having these discovery meetings with clients, and they're obviously going to be stakeholders on the call trying to dictate what they want out of the product. Have you run into that where you would say there's too many cooks in the kitchen?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So due to the nature of our discoveries and the way we structure them, we are essentially the design engineering team and product management team, but our clients are usually the what you would consider the product manager for their company. And so it's helpful to have one point of contact from our perspective to communicate with our clients and people we work with and our partners. So if we no, there's a case where if we need to talk to other stakeholders, we set up meetings to go through their workflows and stuff like that. It makes total sense. But on a regular basis, communicating with more than one point of contact is going to create downstream communication issues that in most cases, you want to avoid.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know from experience, having one person on a client side that owns the project, that is the main point of contact, is usually going to allow for us to have kind of the smoothest process to be able to get from point A, which is to start the start of it, to the end, point B, as quickly as possible.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, great. I know we spoke a little bit about validation. What would you say, like, how can a team measure whether their discovery phase was actually successful? I'm talking about like what signs or metrics should they look for before moving into build mode?
Yep. So that's a great question. Basically, going back to sort of the two parts of the discovery, alignment with what we're building and why. So the internal things that we need, but also the external thing. The internal things what you're looking for is alignment on the purpose of the product, what we're building, that it aligns with the purpose of the product, and that everyone's confident with the plan to build it. And so, in the case of our process, we want to go into the design phase, knowing that what we're designing is useful and makes sense, and that the users need it before we even get into the engineering and actual build of the product. And then looking to the external validation part, what you're looking for is, like I said before, sort of making sure that the solution that you laid out and validated in the discovery solves the problem. And so when you get confirmation on that via observation of the users, going through the prototypes or direct feedback from the users, that's when you know you're in a good spot to move forward. And like I said, because it's a prototype, you might not necessarily know if people are willing to pay for it just yet, but by observation and by direct user feedback, you can get a good sense of that.
Yeah, and it's always a good chance to get your community excited about it, because I know a lot of times our clients have a little bit of community rallied behind them that they've got to at least follow along in their journey. And once you get that prototype, you can share it with them so that they can get a sense of how it feels and looks.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I really only have a couple other questions for you. One of the last questions is, from experience, founders often push back on discovery because of time or cost. What's your advice to those who think discovery is just extra paperwork?
Yeah. The discovery is so important that everything that comes after it is almost it almost doesn't matter if it's not completed. So, like I said, if you want to build a product and you're considering skipping the discovery, it's almost better to just not build the product because what you're going to build will most likely end up being a waste of time and money. So we want to avoid that, right? And so we do that by meticulous planning and also validation, like we said before. And discovery being just a checklist or paperwork is, I would say, the right approach and the right mentality behind, for the discovery is to think of it as sort of an ongoing process of making sure you don't waste time and money. So yes, it's a little bit of money and time upfront, but it's worth it in the so you don't waste more downstream.
That makes sense. And I'm interested to know, like, from your perspective, you have a lot of experience doing this. If you were to set off on your own and build a product by yourself, realistically, how far do you think you could get in that journey before you would have to maybe loop in somebody else? Or do you think, since you've been doing this for so long, you could get to the place where you have a fully built final product?
Yeah, so sort of depends on how technical you are, right? But I actually do this, on the side just for fun. Like I'll build little apps and stuff and get it to like friends and family to like test it out, and that's sort of my own little way of validating products. And I'm big in like the fitness space, so I
Hmm.
created like a nutrition app, and I'm actually working on a little strength training app to track your strength training workouts and stuff like that. So just I sort of have hands-on experience doing it every day, but part of those projects are also me learning to use like vibe coding tools and also agentic coding tools. So yeah, I think the big part is, like I said, if I were to take those products to the next level, the first thing I would do is get it in the hands of real users who actually could benefit from the product and do that iteratively until I'm confident that what I'm giving them solves their real problems. Once their problems are validated, the solution's validated that it solves their problems, then you can actually start trying to charge for it and seeing if people are willing to pay for it.
That's impressive. I would not say that I'm in any sort of technical ability to build a product myself. Although I will say, with things like Lovable, it's becoming more and more realistic each day.
Yeah, I think what we're finding is, I think sort of where the industry is going as a whole as well. The MVP stage and the early validation stage is going to become a lot simpler for people to do. Let's take Lovable for example. It's not. We're already seeing some clients, build an MVP with Lovable, and I'm talking about very very early MVP, validate the product, to some degree, and then come to us for like this sort of full build out product build out now that it's been validated. So, what we're seeing is like custom work is becoming more bespoke in that we want to create a really refined and custom user experience that vibe coding and agentic tools can't deliver on. But always, if you want to do discovery right, we're always here to do that as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested in that theory, where I agree a lot easier to build MVPs, but I wonder if there's almost kind of these two sides to it, where you have the haves and the have-nots. You have like the fully built, really nice polished applications, and then you just have a flood of vibe coded apps where, if somebody is trying to get validation, are they really putting their best foot forward with that? Can a vibe coded app be good enough that people are basically saying, hey, this is great, and somebody gets that validation that they need to say, okay, now I should really build the legit thing that's going to be scalable for the next decade plus?
Yeah. Yeah. And that sort of depends on what stage you're at, right? So I would say if you're like day zero or trying to go 0 to 1, you have nothing. you have no users, you're starting from a clean slate. I would say that it could definitely work to get your first initial users on there, try it out. And then from that point, when it's like, okay, I have something here, you would probably want to start building something better, right? Like via custom development or whatever it is to, you don't want to turn your people away that you're starting to get traction from because your product isn't good and not scalable and all that good stuff. So as soon as you know that it's something you want to deliver on, that's when it's time to build the real thing and build something scalable.
Yeah. In that aha moment where you say, I have something here, is that a matter of 1,000 users? I guess it depends on
Yeah.
what the product is and what you're trying to do. But yeah, I'm not sure if there's a good, like, consistent benchmark for a lot of our listeners who are going through this journey where they'd say, like, I feel like I'm on that fringe, but I'm not really sure to know when that transitional moment is.
Yep. I would say that it depends on one thing specifically. If you are the audience, so there's sort of two products you can build. You can build a product that solves a pain point that you have, so you are the audience, or you can build a product that solves a market need. If you're solving a market need, it's going to take longer to validate. If you are the audience and you're solving your own problem, you can start on that right away because you know the problems, you know what works, right?
Right.
Obviously, the goal is to find a group or community of people who share that problem with you so that you can validate with them and help maybe even build a product with them. Building with users is very useful. But, you know, going down that path, you can probably start the full product development much sooner as you're a little bit more sure of the direction. If you're solving a market need that you don't have experience in or you're not the audience, it might take a little bit longer to get to that point. But the sooner you do it, the sooner you build the full product and scalable product, the better of an impression you'll make on your end user base when you do attract the right audience.
That makes sense. And yeah, that's a smart way to look at it. So, final question for you, Zach. Looking ahead, how do you see discovery evolving with AI, user research, automation, and product and analytics tools? And what should teams start doing now to stay ahead?
Yeah, so I think product discovery with AI tools is going to be a much more hands-on process in a good way. So using AI to rapid prototype, build a functional, practical application that people can use, even if it's a part of an existing product, building the new feature even as its own little separate prototype that you can validate before you go off and build the full scalable product is going to be super useful because it's important for people to know that discovery is a never ending process. You plan in the beginning of any 0 to 1 product that you're trying to get off the ground, but as you're building, you will need to keep validating and keep the discovery loop going. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you plan and build things that again that you don't need, right? So the discovery is always critical. And as long as you keep iterating and validating the future stuff you want to build as well, you're going to be in good hands. With AI, it's just going to be that much easier.
Yeah, I think AI is completely changing the game. So makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I appreciate you jumping on this, Zach. I will say to the listeners, if you are going through this phase yourself, we actually have something that we can provide to you guys for free that would help you in your own journey. We've put together a product requirements document, and this is something that our team uses when we go through the process of, validation, coming up with the right ideas for a product. So just reach out to me directly or through our company website. If you would like for us to share that with you, we'd be more than happy to pass it your way and provide any advice as you get into the planning. But again, Zach, thank you for the time today. Hopefully everybody's come away a little bit more informed on how they should be approaching that discovery phase.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a fun time.
All right. Well, this is Eric Lawrence signing off from Tales from the Pros. All right. Have a good day, everyone.
Please subscribe to our YouTube page and also follow our social media. There are links somewhere around here. But we really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for all the support. And I'm going to be giving you awesome content continuously. And we look forward to seeing you soon.